Welcome to Railroad Station. Here is part 2 of chapter 1 of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We'll go back a little bit because I think the video cut off earlier. I never saw the circle of such hateful faces. And there was a man in the middle with a kind of black, sneering coolness. Frightened, too. I could see that. But carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. "If you choose to make capital out of this accident," said he, "I am naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene," says he. "Name your figure." Well, we screwed him up to £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to stick out, but there was something about the lot of us that meant mischief, and the last he struck. The next thing was to get the money. And where do you think he carried us but to the place with the door? Whipped out a key, went in, and presently came back with the matter of £10 in gold and a cheque for the balance to the courts, drawn payable to the bearer and signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points of my story. But it was a name, at very least, well known and often printed. The figure was stiff, but the signature was good. For more than that, if it was only genuine. I took the liberty of pointing out to my gentleman that the whole business looked apocryphal, and that a man does not in real life walk into a cellar door at 4 a.m. and come out with another man's cheque for close to £100. But it was quite easy and steering. "Set your mind at rest," says he. "I will stay with you till the bank's open and the cash, the cheque, myself." So we all set off, the doctor, the child's father, and our friend and myself, and passed the rest of the night in my chambers, and the next day, when we had breakfasted, went in a body to the bank. I gave the cheque myself, and I said I had every reason to believe that it was a forgery. Not one bit of it. The cheque was genuine. "Oh, tut-tut," said Mr. Utterson. "I feel as you do," said Mr. Enfield. "Yes, it's a bad story, for my man was a fellow that nobody could have to do with, and really damnable man. And the person that drew the cheque is the very pink of propriety, celebrated too, and what makes it worse, one of your fellows who do what they call good. Blackmail, I suppose, an honest man paying through the nose for some of the capers of his youth. Blackmail house, that's what I called the police with the door, in the consequence. Though even that, is far from explaining all," he added with the words that fell into the vein of musing. From this he was recalled by Mr. Utterson, asking rather suddenly, "And what don't you know of the drawer of the cheque where he lives?" "Well, a likely place, isn't it?" returned Mr. Enfield. "But I happened to notice his address. He lives in some square or other." "And you never asked the place with the door?" said Mr. Utterson. "No, sir, I hadn't the delicacy," was the reply. "I feel very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of the style of the Day of Judgment. You start a question, it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly at the top of a hill, and away till the stone goes. Starting others, and presently some bland old bird, with the last one you had thought of, is knocked on its head, and he is in his own back garden. The family has no choice but the name. No, sir, I make it a rule of mine. The more it looks like a queer street, the less I ask." "That's a very good point," said the lawyer. "But I have studied the place myself," continued Mr. Enfield. "It seems scarcely a house. There was no other door, and nobody goes in or out that one. But once in a great while, the gentleman of my adventure, there are 3 windows looking in the court of the first floor, none below. The windows are always shut, but they're clean. And then there is a chimney, which is generally for smoking. But so somebody must live there, and yet it's not so sure, for the buildings are so packed together about the court, it's hard to say where the one ends and where the other one begins." The pair walked on again, for a while in silence, and then, "Enfield," said Mr. Utterson, "that's a good rule of yours." "Yes, I think it is," returned Enfield. "But for all that," continued the lawyer, there's one point I want to ask. I want to ask the name of the man who walked over the child." "Well," said Mr. Enfield, "I can't see what harm it would do. It was the man by the name of Hyde." Said Mr. Utterson. "What sort of man is he to see?" "Well, he's not easy to describe. There's something wrong with his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. I never saw the man I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. He must be deformed somewhere. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't specify the point. He's an extraordinary-looking man, and yet I really can name nothing out of the way. No, sir, I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. It's not want of memory, for I declare I can see him this moment." Mr. Utterson again walked some way in silence, obviously under the weight of consideration. "And you are sure he used a key?" he inquired at last. "My dear sir," began Mr. Enfield, surprised out of himself. "Yes, I know," said Mr. Utterson. "I know it must seem strange, but the fact is I do not ask you the name of the party because I know it already. You see, Richard, your tale has gone home. If you have been inexact at any point, you had better correct it." "I think you might have warned me," returned the other with a touch of sullenness, "but I have been pedantically exact, as you call it. The fellow had a key, and what's more, he has it still. I saw him use it not just a week ago." Mr. Utterson sighed deeply, but never said a word, and the young man presently resumed. "Here is another lesson to say nothing," said he. "I am ashamed of this long tongue. Let us make with a bargain, and never refer to this again." "With all my heart," said the lawyer. I shake hands on that there, Richard."